So I am here with Hannah. And Hannah, I first want to ask you, will you tell me a little bit about your writing project? And I want to talk about like where you feel like you might be stuck.
I don't have a specific project, and it really is just that I am stuck. I do write for a living. I have been a print journalist for a long time, currently in trade publications, but it's very similar skill set and day to day. So I do write a lot. I'm on my computer a lot. And I think that's part of the blockage is that I want to move and do more physical things and that kind of thing when I'm not working and just have a lot of personal business to take care of. So I think
Yeah.
that's part of it. I think the other thing is that as a professional writer, I know that when I have a subject and I really know the subject and I know what I am going to write about, want to write about, or need to, then I can just flow usually. Once in a while there'll be blockage, but if there's something I want to write about, I can go. But there's nothing that I really want to write about. When I do writing exercises, what tends to come up is a lot of personal stuff from my growing up years and my family, uh, a lot of which is very painful. Um, so I think that is also part of it, just not really wanting to write about that stuff. Maybe it's what wants to be written, but it doesn't mean that I want to write it. Um, and another piece of that is that it's a little bit hard to describe my family background, but there was just a lot of nothingness. So it's hard to write about nothing.
Okay. So you brought up a lot of really great things. First, I'm going to start by saying you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't sign up for like a free coaching on how to get unstuck if there wasn't something you wanted to write about. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I do know that I am a writer. I am naturally a writer. And that was even identified by a teacher when I was pretty young.
So
And
you
I have always been a reader, and that kind of comes out of that. So for me, a lot of it is just that that's what I do. And I feel like I should be able to do it in my personal life. And that isn't, a goal of mine to do. But when I look at it, there's nothing that I really want to write from my personal life.
Okay, so you would like to have a regular writing practice, a personal regular writing practice. You would like to.
Yes, and I would like to someday write a book. It's just one of those things on my life list.
Okay, so I'd like to write a book and I'd like to have a regular writing practice personally, but I don't.
Right.
Okay, so one of the things you talked about, you identified through your own wisdom that I'm reflecting to you, is this idea of having things that want to be written about your childhood. Maybe let's, for the sake of it, call it a mini memoir.
Right.
So maybe there's a mini memoir inside of you that wants to come out. Do you think that's possible?
It's funny you said that because I follow a thought leader, Gretchen Rubin, who you may or may not be familiar with. And I get prompts from her. I'm on her app. And one of those last week was write a mini memoir. And I had never even heard the term. And it really resonated with me to the point that I wrote it down on my to do list as something to reflect on. And so I'm so glad you said that. And when I hear something more than one time in a short period, I feel like I'm being spoken to on it.
Yeah,
So,
I was like, this is the universe speaking. And you're just going to keep hearing it from these different people you follow or connect with. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that there, and it doesn't even have to be mini, but it's better to think of it this way when we get started, because if you said I'm writing a memoir, it just can be so overwhelming. So let's think of it as a mini memoir, or I also like to call it a personal journal, where it's like a segment of your life that you want to look at. But let's think of it as a mini memoir, okay? For the sake of this exercise, let's assume, or do you feel comfortable assuming that potentially there's a mini memoir inside of you that wants to be written?
Yes.
Okay, and so for the sake of this exercise, let's just give it a title. So if you had to pick a title for your mini memoir, a working title, what would it be?
I was going to say nothingness, but that it sounds so sad. But that is kind of how I described to you. It was like an absence of life.
Absence of life.
Yeah, or nothingness, something like that.
All right, so what do you want to pick as your working title? Nothingness, absence of life, what else?
I know that that's not very good, but it's something to get me started and
We're just, yeah, we're just
percolating.
a working title.
Let's
So,
just say nothingness because that was the word that came to my mind as I was explaining
yes,
to you.
nothingness. Okay, so now you've got a writing project. It's a mini memoir. The working title is Nothingness. So if you were going to consider that, okay, I'm going to play with this idea, I'm not committing, I'm just playing with this idea that I could develop a regular writing practice around writing this personal mini memoir, and the title is going to be Nothingness. And so let's say we were going to outline a little bit of it together right now. Okay, so we'll imagine there's a beginning, a middle, and end. So let's start with the beginning. Let's say we were going to have 3 sections in the beginning. Are there, what 3 stories from your early life do you feel like should be in there? This is all an experiment. We're not committing.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first thing that came to mind, and this is hard because of what I described earlier, which was that we never did anything. We never went anywhere. My parents never engaged me. I basically spent my childhood in my bedroom. So it's hard for me to think that there could even be enough material to write about because of all the nothingness. So when you asked me that, the image that popped in my mind is a day when I was 5 years old. And I actually went to a friend's birthday party. He had turned 5. And I remember so much about that one day you would not believe, given how young I was. So I think I could maybe use that day as a kind of microcosm to describe what my life was like, because in any normal childhood, that would have been a normal day. For me, it was so unusual that I still remember it.
Yes. So what I'm thinking is, in the beginning, if we were going to have 3 sections, just spitballing, the first one could be in the bedroom, where you talk about how much time you spent in your bedroom. The second one could be a detailed description of this birthday party that you went to when you were 5 years old. And then the third section could be back in the bedroom, or what happened after that.
Yeah.
More nothingness.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, that's the thought. Because I remember the birthday party. That is an earlier memory than me remembering being in the bedroom.
So then we could switch it around. I could start with the birthday party. The second section could be in the bedroom. So you open with this joyous birthday party, and then you find out that was like the first and last time this person really did anything for a year. And so we go from the bedroom into the nothingness.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say we have those 2 sections in the beginning. Now we're going to move into the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think would be the center of this story? Or what would be the center of the story? Or in this story of nothingness, is there like a moment of change?
It could be one thought that comes to mind. When I was a teenager, I rebelled and I as all teenagers do. But in my household, that was huge. You didn't you didn't do that. You just did whatever mom wanted you to do, which was just stay at home and not have a life. So I rebelled, and I think it was short lived because I knew that I couldn't defeat her. I would have to wait until I left home to live life, but it was a precursor of the work I was going to do as an adult to heal from her control.
Wow. Okay. That's great. And especially that it's a precursor of adult life. So now we've got some foreshadowing. And then what happened? What's the next major thing that happens after that?
After the rebellion,
Yes.
I would just say getting ready to graduate and having I can't remember the context, but it was like, what will you be doing in 5 years? What will you be doing in 10 years? And I filled this out. And I think it's hard to remember, but I think I said, oh, I'll be married in 10 years because that seemed like a lifetime, hence.
Mhm.
So I had all these dreams, but I didn't know that I would take the sort of prison was inside of me. The structure was built inside of me. So just escaping the household and my mom's control was not enough. It was going to be much, much work on my part.
Okay. Wow. And then we're going to the next pivotal moment. Does the narrator, we're going to refer to the main character as the narrator, does she do this work? Is there therapy or some kind of work involved?
Hell yes.
Okay, so is there, like, can we just say, is there years of therapy?
Yes.
Okay, so we can take a therapy journey and the
Yes.
learnings that come out, that the learnings that come from there.
Painful journey, very slow. Um, just almost like watching hair grow. It's a painful, slow process that only the individual can do. Nobody else can do that for them.
Okay, and in this mini memoir, and then where does it end?
I wish I knew the answer to that, Robin.
Okay, so remember, we're not talking about really the life journey. We're just talking about for this mini memoir. Does it could end one idea could be it could end where the writer is writing the story.
That's good because I think part of the blockage might be that I feel like I haven't that the redemption has not taken place yet. There's been a lot of internal change, huge internal change, but I don't have the concrete results that I want and need yet. So I feel like that's why it's hard for me because I can't say, if you do this and that, you will get your freedom, you will get redemption. I, I can't say that.
Well, let me ask you something. If you frame this as a story about a child who had no voice, and it ended with a woman who's reclaimed her voice and is writing the story,
Mm,
which doesn't mean the writer's story is over. It's a mini memoir. It's just in this arc, we go from a child who had no voice and really nothingness into a writer who is writing her story, reclaiming her voice and the fullness, even if it isn't complete, but the fullness of what it takes to actually sit down and write your story. How does that feel?
I like that. I think I'm going to have to reflect on it. And, but I like that because I've struggled personally just with my life story and with the writing practice and how to tell a story, just feeling like I'm in this limbo and there's nothing that I have to say yet. But yet the story keeps trying to get out when I do the writing exercises.
Right, exactly. Because, like you said, the story wants to be written. And
Apparently.
and there's another right. And here's the thing, Hannah, we don't always a lot of times we don't choose the story chooses us. And it's like, well, that's not the story I want to write. I don't want to write about my painful childhood, but that's the story that wants to be written. And we as writers can surrender to it and write the story that wants to be written, or we can fight against it, but it's kind of a losing battle. And when
Mm-hmm.
writers who tell me, I sometimes they'll tell me I want to write a book, and I've wanted to write a book for many, 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 many years, but I haven't. It's because as we go through this process that we're doing right now, a lot of these things are painful. And so we get into this idea of, I don't know what to write about, when actually you do. You just
Mm-hmm.
find your whole story. And I'm going to repeat it back to you. But it's in community, it's with support that we're able to bring it forward, because we're wandering into places that are painful and that we generally prefer to avoid. But the thing is, if we're willing to have the courage to sit down and write it, it's like a liberation.
Right. It could release and be part of the grieving process that is necessary.
And,
Uh,
and and it can be part of the grieving process that is necessary, and it can sometimes grow into a full blossomed writing project for your personal self, or potentially to share, who knows? And you don't really need to think about that at this moment. But I'm just
right.
saying that it's given to you for a reason.
Right. And I heard an interview recently with, oh, what's her name? Anne Lamott. And she said, and I don't remember the context exactly, but she said, just get it down, talking about a person's childhood, their past. Just get it down.
I love that. And I like to say, do not let the perfect be the enemy of the done. We all know it's so much easier to edit written information than to create information on from a blank page.
Yes.
A lot of writers get into this thing about it's not being perfect. I don't know where it's going. You started off by saying, when I know what to write, I can write about it, but I don't know what to write. So
Right.
that's our resistance talking. That's our, like, I don't know what to write means don't write anything. Do you see? It's our resistance is always trying to get us not to do our writing.
Yes.
Yours might look like, we don't know in our mental mind what to write, therefore we will write nothing.
Right.
That is just resistance. You don't need to know the entire picture, but actually we've just outlined it. But we just want to get it done for now, just to sketch it all out. And then we don't need to worry about it being perfect. Let's just get it all out. So I'm going to go back with you and I'll talk about your outline. So your working title's Nothingness. It starts with the 5-year-old birthday party, then in the bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
then teenage rebellion, and then this idea of making the future diagram that you talked about, where you were diagramming like what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years.
When I was getting ready to graduate high school. Mm-hmm.
Yes, then that. Then the therapy journey, which is the learnings and the slow and painful process, watching hair grow, like
Yes.
finding little places in there that want to be written about, and then reclaiming your voice by actually writing the whole story.
Yes. And it helps just to get a structure in place, because I operate, if I have I see that as a vehicle or a vessel, if I have a structure. If I don't, if I'm just sitting down and just writing willy-nilly with no idea where it's going, that is very hard for me to do. But with this, I feel like I might be able to get unstuck.
Wonderful. And I'd say, like, for people who have a sense that they want to complete a project, there's two different things. There's finding your voice and free writing and really embracing your voice. But for some people, they're called to complete a writing project.
Yeah.
You are compelled to complete a writing project. The number one thing writers struggle with is, what is the structure?
Right.
And the best way to figure out what the structure is to just pick a structure like we're doing right now and work with that. And then you might decide in the middle, oh, actually, it's going to start with I found my voice. Then I'm going to go back and we're going to move things around. It's fine. We're going to hold it loosely. But if we
Yeah.
have any kind of working structure, we're wandering around in the nothingness going, I can't write.
Right.
So together, we've just outlined a simple structure. And then as you look at it, you might start like the 5-year-old birthday party was a very clear scene and memory. And so as you look at, okay, teenage rebellion, maybe there's that night came home late from the concert, maybe there's very specific things, stories underneath that. Maybe there's a few that you feel like, well, in order to really illustrate this, there's this story and this story and this. And so the structure starts to get filled out more and more. So we can
Yes.
really create a much clearer scaffold.
Yes.
And then from there, you'll know what writing prompts you want to use. Like, okay, I'm going to write about this diagramming I did when I graduated. I'm going to write a whole story about that. The
Mm-hmm.
next time I sit down to write, I'm going to write about the 5-year-old birthday party. The next thing and you're just going to use that to write all these stories and start putting them in order. And from there, thinking about what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And soon you're going to be like, oh my God, my puzzle, all the pieces are starting to come in.
I love that. I mean, I can't tell you how helpful that is to have that structure. And it could be that they manifest sort of like chapters or the like, or short stories or something. When you say mini memoir, how do you define that?
Well, I guess what I'd say is you could think of your mini memoir as a part of your life. In other words, it's not an autobiography. I was born and then this. It's
Right.
like I'm gonna structure it around a theme. In this case, maybe it's being born really without a voice and the process I went through to find it.
Yes.
So that could be the theme. And even though it may be from birth to your life, it's not gonna encompass every single thing that ever happened to you. It's gonna be all stories around this theme of like what happened in the nothingness and when things reached a peak and then what happened after and what I learned and where I ended up. So to me, a mini memoir, I mean, what's the difference between a mini memoir and a memoir? I mean, I just would say mini memoir in the sense that as you go into it, you consider like it could be 12 stories. Like, I'm not going to make this an overwhelming thing. I don't want to, because when we create these giant things, it shuts us down. So
Yeah.
think of it as a mini memoir. Imagine it'll be 12 stories, maybe 12 essays. And I'm going to write them all based on this outline, and then I'm going to put them in an order that I feel like works. And then I'm going to think about what's missing and fill in, and then I'll look at it and see what I got.
Okay. I really like that. I can't tell you how helpful that is. But just to have that structure is the best way to put it for me, just a skeleton. Because if I have that, I can usually just flow and go with it.
I think that's great. And you're going to hold it loosely so that, like, if you decide, oh, there's a whole other section I didn't think of, okay, so maybe it's 3 stories about this, 3 stories about this. Maybe it's like it's in 4 parts. Like, we're just going to hold it loosely. But once you start to put it in order and you start to invite the story in instead of desperately pushing it away, it's going to tell you what it is.
Hmm. Man, I like that. I don't know if you've ever done the artist way.
I love Julia Cameron. Yes.
Somebody just gave me that because I told her about my goal of writing personal stuff, and she had done it for totally different kind of work, but she just gave me the book and the workbook. So I've been doing that for 3 days now, the morning pages. And as you probably know, her philosophy is just to get all the stuff downloaded from our brain, and that frees up your creative, muse or self to come out. So I'm hoping that maybe between the structure that we've developed, and the idea, along with doing that practice for, I think it's about 4 months, 12 weeks. Maybe the combination of those two is going to get me unstuck.
Yes, and I'm just going to point out in Heart Soul Pen, we talk about in the beginning revising and releasing limiting beliefs, anchoring to a creative quality, and writing and creating a writing ritual. These are
Mm-hmm.
things. These things all occur before we even start writing. So
Mm,
thinking about what beliefs am I holding before I even start writing about myself as a writer, about my relationship to my voice, about my relationship to this story. Like, for example, it's going to be really painful to write this story.
right.
That could be a limiting belief that you could write down and cross out and say it's going to be very healing to write this story. See, just opening up to what are the beliefs we're holding and allowing some of them to come forward, looking at them and realizing, okay, this isn't going to serve me. If I believe
Right.
it's painful, it's going to make writing harder. So I'm going to just cross that out and write, it's going to be very healing. I'm going to have ease and grace writing this story. This is part of my journey. You know, these kinds of beliefs, wow, you can feel how much more supportive they are.
Yeah.
I
You're counteracting it. I can think of a couple others.
Yes.
Nobody would want to read about nothingness.
Okay, so let's work with that one. So you could write that down and cross it out and write nothingness is a part of a lot of people's lives.
They would relate.
That would be very relatable.
Mm,
And that for me, nothingness played an important a pivotal role in my life, and it's in service to others to write about it.
I like that. And then another one I'm thinking of is, I have sisters and family members, and would I want them to read this? And of course, I know we're saying this, I don't necessarily have to publish this or try to publish it, but that's another one, is just afraid of people I know reading it.
Okay, and I talk a lot about this in Heart Soul Pen. There is a huge difference between writing and sharing. And in the middle of the process of writing and sharing is a process that I call discernment. So when we write, we give ourselves freedom to write whatever we want. And then before we share, we go into this process called discernment, where we ask ourselves things like, is now the time? Are there consequences? Are there people that would be upset with me? Are these consequences I want to deal with? What are my privacy issues? Do I want to fictionalize it? Maybe I don't care. Do I want to share it privately on, by emailing it to me? Like there's all kinds of questions between writing and sharing in this discernment process around timing and privacy and consequences and all these things that we're going to ask ourselves. So it's really important that we reassure that inner writer that, hey, when we're writing, we're not sharing. There's a whole process we're going to go through before we share. We are
That's good.
we are in this space, which is our free, full, radical self-expression. And just reminding ourselves, we're not going to go from there to sharing. We're going to go through
Right.
this whole middle part where we go into the mental mind and do some serious consideration.
I like that.
As
Yeah.
long as we remember that when we get into that fear, we remind ourselves, oh, we're not in that phase yet. We're just in the writing, and I'm not going to get to the sharing without going through the discernment. And so it helps us remember, like, okay, I am free. I have full permission to write my story.
I like that. And
Yes.
part of it, I think, too, is that because I have the goal of writing a book, and I feel like if I came across some subject and was able to research it, kind of like in a journalistic way and publish a book on something like that, something that interests me, that I could do that. But as I said, this is what keeps coming out, is this stuff. So it almost feels like a waste of time for me personally to use my muse and my time and my effort on something that I might not even want to publish. That's another limiting belief.
100%, because you're not writing your heartfelt writing project to publish it. You're writing your heartfelt writing project to answer the call to write.
Mm,
So that's what you're doing. You're answering the call to write because you're a writer. That's part of the reason why you're here on this planet. And you're just
yeah.
going to answer the call and write the story. And then when the whole story is done, you can go back and edit it and rework it and do whatever you want with it. And then you go into this discernment phase where you ask yourself, what do I want to do with this? Is this a book proposal? Or maybe there's a personal essay in here I just want to publish. Maybe it's a whole novel and I'm going to fictionalize it. Maybe it's just it is a personal journey and I just need to put it away because now I'm free to go on to something else now that I've answered the call. We don't know, but it does not matter. You're writing the story because you're called to do it, and that is enough.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That helps to know that.
That's enough.
Yeah. And it feels like if I'm able to get unstuck and even finish a project, which I like to finish stuff, I don't like, I feel like if I did that, I would be able to flow into the next thing. There would be energy and momentum that I currently or have not had. And I could move on to the next project then.
Correct. And you don't have the energy and momentum because the energy and momentum are being used to push away the story that wants to be written.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really encourage you, Hannah. I think you know what your project is. And I would tell you that I would say 9 times out of 10, but really it's almost 10 times out of 10. When I work with writers, they do know what their project is. And it's really just needing the support to allow it to come forward, having the support to start to structure it a little bit, give it a little bit more of an outline so that the writer has a sense of like, what am I doing?
Yes.
But
That's
really,
huge.
that's huge. But really, you already know.
Oh, that's really, really helpful. And it's funny, I remember you saying that you can get sidetracked by something, some other idea comes up and it gets you off track with what you really need to be writing or what wants to be written. And something had come up, but I didn't feel energy toward it. So,
And I would tell you that now that you've decided, it's going to keep happening. And you literally just have to get a notebook and write ideas. And every time you have these ideas that are really the purpose of them is to distract you from what you just decided you're going to do, you just write them down. Thank you. Thank you. And you have a whole page of all kinds of ideas, and you just tell all these ideas, I'll get to you. But first, I'm going back to the heartfelt writing project. Because, see, the more you decide to do it, that's another little sneaky thing your resistance going to send you 15 other ideas. And you just, okay, thank you. Thank you. I have a whole book now of extra ideas for later. But meanwhile, I'm going back to the heartfelt writing project that wants to be written.
mm, a lot. This is so helpful, Robin. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So thank you. I'm going to send you a copy of this recording.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
so,
you so much.
let me just stop this.